Hey, Staley Squad, today's episode is a real shocker and will definitely give you goosebumps. We've collected the most unbelievable and surprising cheating stories from Reddit. Get ready for astonishing confessions, mind-bending twists, and moments you won't forget anytime soon. Stick around, because what's coming up next will make you question a lot of things. Let's go. Turns out my best friend, who helped me through my divorce, was involved in my husband's affair. Reddit. I've been an avid reader here for a while, but never thought I'd have a story worth sharing. Until now. This is a long one, so buckle up. My husband, let's call him Mark, and I had been married for 8 years. We were high school sweethearts, so our relationship had spanned more than half our lives by the time everything fell apart. We had what I thought was a strong marriage, with the usual ups and downs, but nothing that seemed insurmountable. We have 2 beautiful kids, Ethan 6 and Sophie 4, and we had settled into what I thought was a comfortable and happy life. About 2 years ago, I started noticing that Mark was acting a bit distant. He was working late more often, spending a lot of time on his phone, and seemed less interested in our family activities. At first, I chalked it up to stress from work. He had just taken on a new project that was demanding a lot of his time, and I tried to be supportive. Around this time, my best friend Jessica started coming around more often. Jessica and I had been friends since college. We were inseparable and had gone through so much together: heartbreaks, job changes, the births of my kids, and everything in between. She was always there for me, and I trusted her implicitly. When I confided in her about my concerns with Mark, she was incredibly supportive. She would come over and help with the kids, bring me wine, and we would have long talks about what might be going on. She assured me that it was probably just work stress, and that I shouldn't jump to conclusions. I was grateful for her support. She was my rock during this confusing time. One evening, about a year ago, I found a receipt for a fancy restaurant in Mark's jacket pocket. It was from a night he had told me he was working late. My heart sank. I knew I had to confront him. When I did, he was surprisingly calm and told me it was a business dinner with clients. He even showed me emails and messages to back up his story. I felt guilty for doubting him and pushed my suspicions aside. However, things didn't improve. In fact, they got worse. Mark became even more distant, and I felt like I was losing him. Jessica continued to be my confidant, always ready with a sympathetic ear and comforting words. I don't know how I would have coped without her. Then came the night that shattered my world. Mark came home late, very late. He reeked of alcohol and had lipstick on his collar. I was furious and confronted him. He broke down and admitted that he had been having an affair for the past year. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I was devastated. The next few weeks were a blur. We decided to separate and eventually filed for divorce. Throughout it all, Jessica was by my side. She helped with the kids, offered emotional support, and even assisted with the legal paperwork. I couldn't have gotten through it without her. One day, a few months after Mark had moved out, I was at Jessica's house. I had accidentally left my phone at home, so she lent me hers to make a quick call. After the call, I noticed a notification pop up on her screen, a message from Mark. My blood ran cold. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't help myself. I opened the message. What I found made my heart stop. The message was intimate, far too intimate for 2 people who were supposedly just friends. My hands shook as I scrolled through their conversation, which revealed that they had been seeing each other for over a year, well before Mark and I separated. They had been carrying on their affair right under my nose, all while Jessica pretended to be my supportive best friend. I felt like I was going to be sick. I confronted Jessica immediately. She didn't deny it. In fact, she seemed almost relieved that the truth was finally out. She admitted that they had started seeing each other around the time I first began to notice Mark's distance. She claimed that they had fallen in love and that she didn't know how to tell me. I was in shock. This woman, my best friend, who had held my hand and wiped my tears as I went through the most painful experience of my life, was the same person who had been betraying me all along. I couldn't comprehend it. The betrayal was too deep. I left her house and drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process everything. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. How could they do this to me? How could she? I felt utterly alone and completely shattered. When I confronted Mark, He didn't deny it either. He apologized profusely, saying that he never intended for things to happen this way. He claimed that he and Jessica had tried to fight their feelings, but eventually gave in. He insisted that he was still a good father and wanted to be there for our kids. His words felt hollow and meaningless. The months that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I cut all ties with Jessica and tried to focus on rebuilding my life for the sake of my children. I started therapy, which helped me process the betrayal and begin to heal. I leaned heavily on other friends and family who rallied around me with incredible support. Through therapy, I learned to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation and gaslighting that had been present in both my marriage and my friendship with Jessica. It was a painful realization, but an important one. I had been blind to the toxic dynamics in my life, and it was time to reclaim my power. I also started to see a new side of myself, one that was stronger and more resilient than I had ever realized. I enrolled in a course to further my career, started working out regularly, and began to find joy in the small things again. Slowly but surely, I started to rebuild my life. Mark and I managed to find a way to co-parent effectively. It wasn't easy, but we both put our kids first. I didn't want my bitterness and anger to affect Ethan and Sophie. They deserved happiness and stability, and I was determined to give it to them. As for Jessica, I never spoke to her again. I heard through mutual friends that she and Mark had broken up not long after our confrontation. I didn't care to know the details. I had no room in my life for toxic people. A year later, I'm in a much better place. The pain of betrayal doesn't sting as sharply as it once did, and I've learned to trust again, though I'm much more cautious about who I let into my life. I've discovered the importance of self-love and self-respect, and I'm teaching my kids those same values. If there's one thing I've learned from this ordeal, it's that you never really know who you can trust. But I've also learned that I am capable of overcoming even the deepest of betrayals. I am stronger than I ever knew, and that strength has carried me through the darkest of times. To anyone going through something similar, know that you are not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, and betrayed. But remember, you have the power to heal and come out stronger on the other side. Surround yourself with people who truly care about you, and never let anyone dim your light. Thank you for reading my story. Writing this has been incredibly cathartic, and I hope it can offer some comfort or insight to others who may be facing their own challenges. Stay strong, Reddit. Let's move on to the next story. I found out my wife was having an affair with my friend when I accidentally saw them on a date. Hey Reddit, I've been lurking for a while, but I never thought I'd have a story to share. This is going to be long and pretty detailed, so bear with me. My wife Sarah and I have been married for 10 years. We met in college and instantly clicked. She was my best friend, my confidant, and I truly believed we were soulmates. We had built a beautiful life together, complete with 2 wonderful kids, Emily 8 and Jake 5. One of my closest friends from college, Mike, had always been a part of our lives. He was like a brother to me, and he and Sarah got along well too. We had countless double dates, family outings, and holidays together. He was single, so we often included him in our family activities to make sure he didn't feel lonely. For the past year, I noticed Sarah becoming more distant. She seemed preoccupied, often glued to her phone or going out without much explanation. I chalked it up to stress from her job. She had recently taken on more responsibilities and often worked late. Mike, too, had been busier than usual, so our hangouts had decreased. I didn't think much of it at the time. One Friday evening, about 6 months ago, I was supposed to meet up with a client for dinner to discuss a new project. At the last minute, the client canceled, leaving me with an unexpectedly free evening. I decided to take advantage of this rare opportunity and surprise Sarah with a nice dinner out. I knew she had mentioned she might work late, but I thought it would be a pleasant surprise anyway. I went to one of our favorite restaurants, a cozy little Italian place downtown. As I walked in, I immediately saw them, Sarah and Mike, sitting at a table in the corner, looking very much like a couple on a romantic date. They were holding hands across the table, laughing and completely engrossed in each other. My heart stopped, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I stood there frozen for what felt like an eternity. When I finally managed to move, I walked out of the restaurant, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do or where to go. I ended up driving around aimlessly, my thoughts a chaotic jumble of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. How could they do this to me? To our family? After a couple of hours, I finally went home. Sarah wasn't back yet. I sat in the living room, staring at the wall, waiting for her. When she finally came in, she looked surprised to see me. She asked why I was home early, and I told her the client had canceled. I didn't mention what I had seen. I needed time to process everything. The next few days were torture. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and couldn't focus at work. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I knew I had to confront Sarah, but I was terrified of what she might say. I didn't want to believe that my wife and my best friend could betray me like this. Finally, one evening after the kids were in bed, I sat Sarah down and told her what I had seen. Her reaction was a mix of shock and guilt. She admitted that she and Mike had been seeing each other for a few months. She tried to explain that it started as just a friendship, but eventually developed into something more. She said she was confused about her feelings and didn't know how to handle the situation. I was devastated. I asked her if she loved him, and she couldn't give me a straight answer. She said she still loved me and didn't want to lose our family, but she also had feelings for Mike. I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. The next few weeks were a blur. We decided to take some time apart to figure things out. I moved in with my brother while Sarah stayed at the house with the kids. We told them that Mommy and Daddy needed some time to think, but that we both loved them very much. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. During this time, I couldn't stop thinking about all the moments we had shared with Mike. Every memory was tainted by the knowledge of their betrayal. I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. I started to question everything, our marriage, our friendship, my own judgment. I confided in a few close friends and family members who were all incredibly supportive. They helped me see that I wasn't to blame for what had happened. Sarah and Mike had made their own choices, and those choices didn't reflect on me, but it was still incredibly painful to accept. After about a month, Sarah and I decided to try couples therapy. We both wanted to see if there was a way to salvage our marriage. Therapy was difficult, but it forced us to confront the issues that had led to the affair. We talked about our communication problems, unmet needs, and the ways we had both contributed to the breakdown of our relationship. Mike tried reaching out to me several times, but I ignored him. I couldn't bear to hear his excuses or apologies. I needed to focus on my own healing and on my family. Eventually, he stopped trying, and I heard through mutual friends that he had moved to a different city to start fresh. Therapy was a long and arduous process, but it helped us rebuild our relationship on a new foundation of honesty and transparency. Sarah and I both made a commitment to work on our marriage and to be open about our feelings and needs. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments when I wanted to give up, but we slowly started to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. One of the hardest parts was learning to forgive, not just Sarah, but also myself. I had to let go of the anger and resentment that were consuming me and learn to forgive her for her mistakes. I also had to forgive myself for not seeing the signs and for feeling like I had failed as a husband and a friend. It's been 6 months since I found out about the affair. Sarah and I are still together, and our relationship is stronger than it has ever been. We have learned to communicate better, to be more attentive to each other's needs, and to prioritize our marriage and family above all else. I won't lie, there are still days when the pain and betrayal feel fresh, and I wonder if I made the right decision to stay. But then I look at our children, at the life we've built together, and I know that it's worth fighting for. We are not perfect, but we are committed to each other and to making our marriage work. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that love is not always enough. Relationships take work, and it's important to be vigilant and proactive in nurturing them. I also learned that forgiveness is a choice, and it's a powerful one. It doesn't excuse the hurt that was caused, but it allows you to move forward and to heal. To anyone who might be going through something similar, know that you are not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, and betrayed. It's okay to take time to heal and to make decisions that are best for you. Surround yourself with people who support and love you, and don't be afraid to seek professional help if you need it. You are stronger than you think, and you will get through this. Thank you for reading my story. Sharing this has been incredibly cathartic, and I hope it can offer some comfort or insight to others who might be facing their own challenges. Stay strong, Reddit. Let's move on to the next story. After long investigations, I found out my partner was married to someone else while we were dating. Hi, Reddit. I've been a lurker here for years, but never thought I'd have a story to share. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. My partner, Julia, and I had been together for 3 years. We met at a mutual friend's party and hit it off immediately. Julia was charismatic, intelligent, and beautiful, everything I had ever wanted in a partner. We quickly became inseparable, spending almost every day together. From the beginning, our relationship was intense. We had a deep connection and shared many interests and passions. We traveled together, made plans for the future, and even discussed getting married one day. I was head over heels in love with her, and I thought she felt the same way. About a year into our relationship, Julia mentioned that she had been married before but was now divorced. She didn't give many details, and I didn't press her for more. I trusted her completely and didn't see any reason to doubt her story. However, over the next 2 years, there were a few red flags that I chose to ignore. Julia was often vague about her past and avoided talking about her family. She would occasionally disappear for a few days, claiming she needed to visit a sick relative or take care of personal matters. Whenever I asked for more information, she would get defensive and change the subject. One day, about 6 months ago, I was cleaning out our shared apartment when I came across a stack of old letters and documents in Julia's drawer. I wasn't intentionally snooping, but curiosity got the best of me. As I went through the papers, I found a marriage certificate, but it wasn't dated years ago as I had expected. It was dated just a year before we met. My heart started pounding. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized what this could mean. Julia hadn't been divorced when we started dating. She was still married. I couldn't believe it. I felt betrayed, confused, and angry all at once. I decided to confront Julia about the marriage certificate. When she came home that evening, I showed her the document and asked for an explanation. Her face went pale and she sat down, visibly shaken. She admitted that she had lied to me. She was still married to her husband, Tom. Julia explained that her marriage to Tom had been falling apart for years, and she had planned to leave him long before she met me. However, she said that she couldn't bring herself to go through with the divorce due to guilt and fear of how it would affect her family. She claimed that she truly loved me and had intended to leave Tom, but things had gotten complicated. I was devastated. I couldn't understand how she could deceive me for so long. I felt like my entire relationship had been a lie. I needed time to process everything, so I told Julia that I needed some space. I moved out of our apartment and stayed with a friend for a while. During this time, I couldn't stop thinking about all the inconsistencies and red flags I had ignored over the years. I decided to do some digging to find out the full truth about Julia's situation. I started by looking up public records and found out that Julia and Tom had been married for over 6 years. They owned a house together in a nearby town, which Julia had never mentioned to me. I also found Tom's social media profiles. From his posts, it was clear that he had no idea about Julia's double life. He often posted pictures of them together, looking happy and in love. It was like a punch to the gut every time I saw a new photo. How could she live such a lie for so long? Determined to get to the bottom of things, I reached out to Tom. I wasn't sure how he would react, but I felt he deserved to know the truth. I sent him a message, explaining who I was and what I had discovered. To my surprise, he responded quickly and agreed to meet me in person. When we met, Tom was understandably shocked and angry. He had no idea that Julia had been seeing someone else. He told me that their marriage had been rocky for a while, but he never suspected that she was living a double life. We exchanged stories and timelines, and it became clear that Julia had been deceiving both of us for years. Tom decided to confront Julia about the affair. He told me that he planned to file for divorce and wanted to ensure that she couldn't continue her web of lies. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. While I was glad that the truth was finally coming to light, I was also heartbroken over the end of my relationship and the betrayal I had experienced. Julia reached out to me a few days later, begging for forgiveness and asking for another chance. She claimed that she loved me, and that she would do anything to make things right. But I couldn't bring myself to trust her again. The damage had been done, and I knew that our relationship could never be the same. I told Julia that I couldn't continue our relationship. I needed to move on and heal from the betrayal. She was devastated, but she seemed to understand. We parted ways, and I focused on rebuilding my life without her. Over the next few months, I worked on healing and processing everything that had happened. I went to therapy, leaned on my friends and family for support, and slowly started to put the pieces of my life back together. It wasn't easy, but I knew that I deserved better than a relationship built on lies. During this time, I also stayed in touch with Tom. We became friends, bonded by our shared experience of betrayal. He finalized his divorce from Julia and started to rebuild his own life. It was comforting to have someone who understood what I was going through, and we supported each other through the healing process. Looking back, I realized that I had ignored so many red flags because I wanted to believe in the person I loved. I learned a lot about myself and about relationships through this experience. I learned the importance of honesty, communication, and trusting my instincts. Now, a year after discovering Julia's deception, I'm in a much better place. I've moved on and started dating again, with a new perspective on relationships and what I deserve. I'm more cautious, but also more open to finding genuine love and connection. If there's one thing I've learned from this ordeal, it's that you should never ignore your gut feelings. If something feels off, it probably is. Trust yourself, and don't be afraid to ask questions and seek the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. Sharing this has been incredibly cathartic, and I hope it can offer some comfort or insight to others who might be facing their own challenges. Stay strong and always trust your instincts. Let's move on to the next story. If you think your wife is genuine, try finding out if she has secrets from you, like what happened in my story. Hey Reddit, I've been a silent reader for quite some time, but now I have a story to share that you won't believe. This is a long one, so make yourself comfortable. My name is Rachel, and I've been married to my husband David for 10 years. We met in college and instantly hit it off. David was charming, intelligent, and incredibly caring. We had a fairy tale romance that led to a beautiful wedding and eventually 2 wonderful kids, Max 7 and Lily 5. Our life seemed perfect, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. David worked in finance and had a demanding job, often requiring him to travel. I was a stay-at-home mom, dedicating my time to raising our kids and managing our household. Despite his busy schedule, David always made time for us, and I never doubted his love and commitment to our family. About a year ago, I started noticing subtle changes in David's behavior. He became more secretive with his phone, spending long hours locked in his home office even when he wasn't working. He also started traveling more frequently, often for longer periods. I chalked it up to work stress and the increasing demands of his job. One evening, while David was away on a business trip, I was cleaning up our bedroom when I accidentally knocked over a pile of papers on his desk. As I picked them up, a small locked box fell out. It was something I had never seen before. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to find the key. After searching for a while, I found it hidden in the back of his drawer. When I opened the box, I found a stack of photographs, letters, and a small black notebook. The photographs were of David with another woman, taken in various locations over the past few years. They looked happy and intimate, like a couple deeply in love. My heart sank, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The letters were love letters from this woman, expressing her deep affection for David and recounting their time together. Some were dated as far back as 5 years ago. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly devastated. How could the man I loved, the father of my children, have been living a double life for so long? I decided to read the black notebook. It was filled with details about David's secret life dates, locations, and even expenses related to his affair. There were notes about their future plans and discussions about leaving his family to be with her. I was in shock. My entire world felt like it was collapsing around me. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to process everything. I knew I had to confront David, but I didn't know how. I was terrified of what this would mean for our family, our kids, and my own sanity. I confided in my best friend Sarah, who was equally shocked and outraged. She offered her support and encouraged me to confront David as soon as possible. When David returned from his trip, I told him we needed to talk. I showed him the photographs, the letters, and the notebook. His face went pale and he sat down, clearly shaken. He admitted to the affair, saying it had started as a brief fling but had developed into something more serious over the years. He claimed he still loved me and our children, but he couldn't deny his feelings for this other woman. I was heartbroken. I asked him why he had continued to deceive me for so long, and he said he was afraid of losing everything. He didn't want to hurt me or our kids, but he also couldn't let go of his affair. It was a classic case of wanting to have his cake and eat it too. We decided to separate temporarily to figure things out. David moved into a friend's house while I stayed in our home with the kids. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I knew I needed time to think and to protect our children from the chaos. During our separation, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. I felt angry, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I also felt a sense of loss for the life I thought we had. I started seeing a therapist who helped me work through my feelings and gain some perspective. I also leaned heavily on Sarah and other friends and family members who were incredibly supportive. David and I continued to communicate, mostly about the kids, but we also had several difficult conversations about our future. He expressed remorse and said he wanted to work things out, but I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. I felt like our entire relationship had been a lie. One day, I decided to do some digging of my own. I needed to know more about this other woman and the extent of their relationship. I found her social media profiles and started piecing together their timeline. It was clear that she had been a significant part of David's life for a long time, and they had built a relationship based on lies and deceit. I also discovered that David had been funding a luxurious lifestyle for her. Expensive trips, gifts, and even a rented apartment. He had been using our family's money to support his affair. I was furious. This wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it was a betrayal of our family's financial security. Armed with this new information, I confronted David once again. He admitted to everything and broke down, saying he was ashamed and didn't know how to fix things. He begged for another chance, promising to cut ties with her and to do whatever it took to rebuild our trust. I was torn. Part of me wanted to believe him and give our marriage another chance, but another part of me couldn't get past the betrayal. I decided to take some more time to think and to seek legal advice about our options moving forward. Over the next few months, David went to therapy and made genuine efforts to repair our relationship. He cut off all contact with the other woman, closed the rented apartment, and started being more transparent about his whereabouts and finances. He was genuinely remorseful and committed to making things right. During this time, I focused on myself and our kids. I went back to work part-time, started taking better care of my physical and mental health, and spent quality time with Max and Lily. It was a challenging but necessary journey to rediscover my own strength and independence. After several months of hard work and soul-searching, David and I decided to try couples therapy. We both wanted to see if there was a way to salvage our marriage and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Therapy was tough, forcing us to confront our issues and communicate honestly about our feelings and needs. Slowly but surely, we started to rebuild our relationship. We learned to communicate better, to be more present and supportive of each other, and to prioritize our marriage and family. It wasn't easy, and there were many times when I questioned if we could ever fully recover. But we kept working at it day by day. It's been a year since I discovered David's secret life, and while our marriage is not perfect, it's stronger than it's ever been. We've learned the importance of honesty, communication, and mutual support. We're both committed to making our marriage work and to being the best parents we can be for Max and Lily. And if there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that even the deepest betrayals can be overcome with time, effort, and a genuine commitment to change. Trust can be rebuilt, but it requires transparency, accountability, and a willingness to confront and address the underlying issues. To anyone who might be going through something similar, know that you are not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, and betrayed. It's okay to take time to heal and to make decisions that are best for you and your family. Surround yourself with people who support and love you, and don't be afraid to seek professional help if you need it. You are stronger than you think, and you will get through this. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. Sharing this has been incredibly cathartic, and I hope it can offer some comfort or insight to others who might be facing their own challenges. Stay strong, and always trust your instincts. Let's move on to the next story. I found out my wife has a double life as an adult film star. Hi Reddit, I never thought I'd have a story worth sharing here, but my life took a turn so surreal and shocking that I just need to get it out. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. My name is Michael, and I've been married to my wife Laura for 8 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. Laura was everything I ever wanted in a partner. She was smart, beautiful, and had a great sense of humor. We got married 2 years after graduating and started building our life together. Laura works as a graphic designer and I'm an IT specialist. From the outside, our life seemed perfect. We lived in a comfortable suburban home, had a good social life with friends and family, and were planning to start a family soon. Laura had always been a bit reserved about her past, but I didn't push her. I believe that everyone has their secrets, and as long as they don't affect our relationship, it's okay to keep them. A few months ago, things started to change. Laura became increasingly distant and secretive. She was often glued to her phone, taking calls and texting at odd hours. She also started going out more frequently, claiming she had work meetings or was catching up with old friends. I noticed these changes, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I trusted Laura, and I believed in our relationship. One night, while Laura was out supposedly meeting a friend, I was at home watching TV. Out of boredom, I started browsing through some adult entertainment websites, a habit I had developed over the years when Laura wasn't in the mood. As I was scrolling through the videos, I suddenly saw a thumbnail that made my heart stop. The woman in the video looked exactly like Laura. I clicked on the video, hoping it was just someone who looked similar. But as soon as it started playing, I knew without a doubt that it was her. I watched in shock as my wife, under the alias Lola Star, performed in a scene with another man. My mind was racing, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I spent the rest of the night in a state of disbelief and confusion. I found more videos of Laura under the same alias, some dating back several years. It was clear that she had been living this double life for quite some time. I felt betrayed, hurt, and angry. How could she keep something like this from me? What else was she hiding? When Laura came home that night, I confronted her. I showed her the videos and demanded an explanation. She went pale and broke down in tears. She admitted everything. Laura had been working in the adult film industry since college, long before we met. She said that it started as a way to make money during tough times, but she continued because it became a lucrative side job. Laura told me that she had kept it a secret because she was ashamed and didn't know how to tell me. She claimed that she loved me and that her work in the industry didn't mean anything emotionally. It was just a job to her, and she didn't want to lose me because of it. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to believe her, to understand and forgive her. But another part of me felt utterly betrayed. I needed time to process everything, so I told Laura that I needed some space. I left the house and stayed with a friend for a few days. During that time, I couldn't stop thinking about our relationship and the life we had built together. I kept questioning everything. Was our love real? Was she ever truly happy with me? I also started wondering what our friends and family would think if they found out. It was overwhelming. I decided to dig deeper into Laura's double life. I found forums and websites where she was discussed and reviewed. It was surreal to read strangers' opinions about my wife. I discovered that she was quite popular in the industry with a substantial following. It felt like a punch to the gut every time I read a new comment or review. I reached out to a therapist to help me navigate my feelings. Talking to a professional helped me understand that Laura's actions, while hurtful, didn't necessarily mean she didn't love me. I started to see that her work in the adult film industry was a part of her past that she had compartmentalized and kept separate from our life together. After a few days, I went back home to talk to Laura. We had a long, emotional conversation. She reiterated her love for me and her regret for not telling me sooner. She explained how she had planned to quit the industry before we got married, but was pulled back in by the financial stability it provided. Laura assured me that she had never been unfaithful emotionally and that her work was purely professional. I told her how betrayed and hurt I felt. I asked her why she didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. She admitted that she was scared of losing me and didn't know how to bridge the gap between her two lives. Laura promised that she was done with the industry and wanted to focus on our marriage and starting a family. We decided to try couples therapy to work through our issues. It was a long and difficult journey, but we made progress. Through therapy, I learned to understand Laura's perspective and the reasons behind her decisions. She learned to be more open and honest with me. We both had to rebuild trust and find a way to move forward together. Laura's past was still a sensitive topic, and it took time for me to fully come to terms with it. There were moments of doubt and insecurity, but we faced them together. We worked on improving our communication and building a stronger foundation for our relationship. A year has passed since I discovered Laura's double life. Our marriage is not perfect, but it's stronger than ever. We've learned to be more honest and supportive of each other. Laura has left the adult film industry behind and is focusing on her career in graphic design. We're also planning to start a family soon, something we're both excited about. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that relationships are complex and require constant effort and communication. Secrets can destroy trust, but with time, understanding, and commitment, it's possible to rebuild and come out stronger. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. Sharing this has been therapeutic for me, and I hope it can offer some insight or comfort to others who might be facing similar challenges. Stay strong and always strive for honesty and understanding in your relationships. It turned out, my husband had been seeing my sister behind my back all these years. Hi Reddit, this is my first time sharing a story here, and it's one I never thought I'd be telling. It's going to be a long and emotional journey, so please bear with me. My name is Emma, and I've been married to my husband Jake for 10 years. We met in college and quickly fell in love. Jake was everything I could have wanted, charming, kind, and supportive. We built a beautiful life together and had 2 wonderful children, Liam 7 and Ella 5. Everything seemed perfect. My sister Sarah and I had always been close. Growing up, we were inseparable. She was my best friend, my confidant, and my rock. Even after I got married and had kids, we remained very close. Sarah was a frequent visitor at our home, and Jake and she got along well. I was happy that my husband and sister were such good friends. It felt like one big happy family. About a year ago, I started noticing some changes in Jake's behavior. He became more distant and secretive, spending long hours at work and frequently going on business trips. He also started spending more time on his phone, often leaving the room to take calls or sending texts late into the night. I was worried but didn't want to seem paranoid. I trusted Jake, and I didn't want to believe that he could be hiding something from me. Sarah was always there to support me, reassuring me that Jake was just stressed from work. She encouraged me to be patient and understanding, reminding me how much Jake loved me. Her words were comforting, and I tried to believe that everything would be okay. One evening, Jake told me he had to go on another business trip for a few days. As usual, Sarah came over to keep me company and help with the kids. She was her usual cheerful self, and I was grateful to have her around. We spent the evening chatting and watching movies after putting the kids to bed. The next day, I was cleaning up around the house when I found Jake's laptop on the kitchen counter. It was unusual for him to leave it behind, but I figured he must have forgotten it in his rush to leave. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to open it. To my surprise, it wasn't password protected. I started going through his emails and documents, hoping to find some clues about his recent behavior. What I found was far worse than I could have ever imagined. There were hundreds of emails and messages between Jake and Sarah, dating back years. They were filled with declarations of love, plans for secret meetings, and details of their affair. My heart sank, and I felt like I was going to be sick. It was like a nightmare. My husband and my sister, the 2 people I trusted most in the world, had been betraying me for years. I couldn't believe it. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and utter devastation. How could they do this to me? How could they keep up this charade for so long? I spent the next few hours reading through the messages, trying to piece together the timeline of their affair. It had started shortly after Jake and I got married. They had managed to keep it a secret for nearly a decade, meeting in hotels during his business trips, and even in our home when I was away. I was shocked at the extent of their deceit and the lengths they had gone to keep their relationship hidden from me. That evening, I confronted Sarah. She came over as usual, and I couldn't contain my anger. I showed her the emails and messages, demanding an explanation. She broke down in tears, admitting everything. She said that she and Jake had fallen in love, but they didn't want to hurt me, so they kept their relationship a secret. She claimed that they never intended for it to go on for so long, but they couldn't stop. I was furious. I couldn't believe the audacity of their excuses. They had both betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now they were trying to justify their actions. I told Sarah to leave and that I never wanted to see her again. She left in tears, but I didn't care. I felt nothing but anger and betrayal. When Jake returned from his business trip, I confronted him too. He tried to deny it at first, but when I showed him the evidence, he couldn't lie anymore. He confessed to the affair and begged for forgiveness. He said he still loved me and that he wanted to make things right, but I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. I told Jake to leave and that I needed time to think. He moved out to stay with a friend, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I felt completely alone. The two people I had trusted most had betrayed me, and I didn't know how to move forward. Over the next few weeks, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. I cried, I screamed, and I felt numb. I had to take care of Liam and Ella, who didn't understand why their dad wasn't coming home. I tried to keep things as normal as possible for them, but it was incredibly difficult. Every time I looked at them, I was reminded of the betrayal and the family we had lost. I decided to seek therapy to help me navigate my feelings and figure out what to do next. Talking to a professional helped me process the betrayal and start to heal. I also confided in a few close friends who were incredibly supportive. They couldn't believe what had happened and were there for me every step of the way. Jake continued to reach out, asking for another chance. He said he was willing to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. He started going to therapy on his own and promised to cut all contact with Sarah. But I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him or if I even wanted to. Sarah also tried to reach out, sending me long emails and messages, begging for my forgiveness. She said she was sorry and that she missed me, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. The wound was too deep, and I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. As the months went by, I focused on healing and taking care of myself and my children. I went back to work part-time and started building a new routine. It wasn't easy, but slowly I began to feel stronger. I started to rediscover who I was outside of my roles as a wife and a sister. After several months of therapy and soul-searching, I decided to give Jake one last chance. We began couples therapy to see if there was a way to rebuild our relationship. It was a long and difficult journey, filled with painful conversations and moments of doubt, but we both put in the effort and started to make progress. Rebuilding trust was the hardest part. Jake had to prove himself every day, and I had to learn to open up and communicate my feelings. There were times when I wanted to give up, but I kept pushing forward for the sake of our children and the love we once shared. A year has passed since I discovered the affair. Our marriage is still a work in progress, but we're in a better place. We've learned to communicate more openly and honestly, and we're both committed to making our relationship work. It hasn't been easy, but we're slowly rebuilding the trust that was shattered. As for Sarah, I've chosen to keep my distance. I still can't bring myself to forgive her, and I don't know if I ever will. She's tried to make amends, but the betrayal was too deep. I need more time to heal and to figure out if there's any way to salvage our relationship. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that healing takes time. Betrayal cuts deep, and rebuilding trust is a long and difficult process. But with time, effort, and support, it is possible to move forward and find a new sense of normalcy. To anyone who might be going through something similar, know that you are not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, and betrayed. Take the time you need to heal and surround yourself with people who support and love you. And remember, it's okay to seek professional help if you need it. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. Sharing this has been incredibly cathartic, and I hope it can offer some comfort or insight to others who might be facing their own challenges. Stay strong and always trust your instincts.